many countries, thalidomide was sold over the counter, so you didn't even need a prescription. Doctors also prescribed it when they felt it appropriate, though, for sleep problems, depression, headaches, colds, flu, nausea, and, as I mentioned, morning sickness for those who were pregnant. Oh, and it was also in some cough medicines. Now,
Wow.
while it did go through testing on animals and then some light testing on humans, it showed little to no side effects or toxic effects. What was not considered, however, was teratogenic effects or like effects on fetal development. They didn't consider effects on pregnancy. This would prove to be a horrible mistake and result in some pretty horrible birth defects for thousands of babies.
Yeah. Hello again, everyone. Welcome back to the Poisoner's Almanac. I'm your co-host, Adam.
I'm Rebecca. This is
Good
Doug.
morning, my dear. Yeah, it is Doug. Oh,
Cute. Can I pet that
I
dog?
have just met you. I have just met you, and I love you. He's one of the best characters in any animated movie.
Yes.
Yeah. So we had so many great comments come through for our last several episodes. Blaufrosch, she said, Sheets in Ohio has ketchup chips and fried zucchini brownies. Yay, Zucchini Fest.
Oh, I like
Are
zucchini,
delicious.
but I've never had brownies with zucchini.
Yeah.
But I do like zucchini.
Fried zucchini brownies, ladies and gentlemen.
We have fried zucchini like fries here that you dip.
Yes.
It's the South. They can fry anything down here, to be honest. But I know they have those.
Uh-huh. And she also says, Kreutz, she says, and Kreutz is pronounced where the EU diphthong. Is that how you say that word? The EU diphthong sounds like oi, so Kreutz.
Kreutz. Yeah. That makes
Which,
sense.
I'll have you know, I did know that was correct pronunciation because of the movie, because of the movie, The Bourne Identity. Because Jason Bourne's, Jason Bourne's accomplice. Sorry. We're going to get back in the same room soon, just so you guys know. So this kind of annoying delay will not be present. Like it's worked kind of okay, but the delay not being face to face with each other has been much different. So we have to find the time to move both recording rigs into this studio where I am, so we can be in the same room. Anyways, I think this is Kiki. Kiki says the McDonald's lawsuit was just sad all over. That woman's life and body was permanently affected. I hate how corporations have spun it as frivolous lawsuits.
Yeah, it was pretty serious.
She only wanted money to cover her medical bills, and they were only going to give her $800. She deserved every single penny they awarded her.
It was pretty serious.
Well put, Kiki. I actually don't know the extent of her injuries. But I mean, just like no company has ever wanted to pay their workers a living wage in the United States, they sure don't want to pay out in a lawsuit. So just keep that in mind.
She had like at least second degree, maybe some third degree burns as well. It was bad. It burned her bad.
That's hot. That is some hot coffee. Rory says, mushroom killer lady from Australia, and the event happened in rural Victoria. It's so wild. There's a podcast about it now too, which I believe.
Yeah, I think she might be the one that actually sent me it on the Instagram, because I was like, well, I need to hear that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Liz Bianchini. She says, thanks for reading my comment. That house and landlord were an absolute nightmare. Kind of shocked I didn't get sick. Ultimately decided against a PhD, but I do have my master's. I focused on influenza A viruses spreading via wild waterfowl. and was fortunate to end up being able to publish my thesis in the Avian Diseases Journal. That's interesting.
That's cool.
I might go look that up, Liz. Viruses have always been a special interest to me, or for me. I teach microbiology and anatomy, mostly. Lots of prerequisites for health.
Never run out of content.
No,
viruses
you will not.
are just constantly with us.
Thomas Paris says, when I was in college, I read the book The Trembling Mountain, a personal account of Kuru, cannibalism, and mad cow by Dr. Robert Kleitzman. It scared me then, and I was like 20. Prion disease, aka spongiform encephalopathy, aka mad cow, aka Kuru, is no joke. And as you said, those proteins are incredibly difficult to destroy. Yeah. And Blaufrosch comes back again on the Toxic Ghost Towns Part 2. She said, y'all need to write down the wild stuff Adam says, like my blank word document, Caucasian self. It's one of my favorite things to call myself because I am Caucasian.
I'm just going to call you Clippy. You just pop up on the screen with your little glasses and you're like,
yes.
Hey.
It looks like you were trying to spell.
I loved Clippy.
He was great. Rip Clip. And a comment, I don't quite know how to pronounce this name. Rias or Rai or Ray Canadas. I'm not sure how to pronounce that. I'm so sorry. This is from 5 days ago on the Toxic Ghost Towns Part 2. She says, thanks for the good work. I'm loving the new equipment, better quality in audio and video. We really appreciate you saying that because, you know, this is we're building the plane while we fly it as far as like production and, you know, gear and all that stuff. Our cameras are our phones. We're using the rear facing camera on our phones because you would literally have to spend, I don't know, $1,000, $1,500 to get a mirrorless camera that's better than the one on the iPhone. It's literally cost prohibitive.
Now we just hope my computer holds out because my poor thing has been worked to death. I promised to give it a break today. I'm going to give it a break today.
I'm crossing so many fingers.
My computer's like, help me. Literally, it's like doing that fan thing. I need to like get some of those like little air thingies and see if I just need to clean it out or something because
I don't know.
It's so mad at me.
I feel like we're headed to the Genius Bar soon so we can optimize that computer and get it to last as long as possible.
It's going to be okay. I encourage my computer. It's okay, computer. So when it takes over, when the AI takes over, you know, it won't kill me.
Yes. Okay, that's going to bring us to poison in the news. Let me get this on the screen here for you wonderful viewers. This one's going to make you mad. Just going to warn you now. Let's see. Get rid of the pop-up. Children left seriously ill after parents follow influencers' advice to cure autism with bleach.
Oh, dear God. Like...
Now, Carrie Rivera claims her chemical protocol rids children of parasites, but experts warn it poses serious health risks.
Wait. So now, obviously, there's a difference, between this and like eczema and taking bleach baths. She's having them drink it.
Yes.
Right. Oh.
Yes.
And parasites. Okay.
Yes. A social media influencer is promoting industrial bleach as a false autism cure, despite health warnings and reports from parents that their children have become seriously ill after following her advice. No kidding. Oh, man, the screen is jumping all over the place. I'm sorry, y'all. I zoomed in, and the ads are trying to take over. Carrie Rivera, who has more than 17,000 followers on Instagram for some reason, encourages parents to give their autistic children chlorine dioxide, a potentially lethal chemical used to bleach textiles and disinfect industrial surfaces.
Yeah, don't do that.
Immediately no.
Don't do that.
Immediately no.
It won't kill prions, though.
It shan't. It shan't because it can't. Experts have called her fake cures sickening, adding, it is wrong, dangerous, and harmful to autistic people and their families. And may I add, to everyone. You shouldn't drink bleach.
Don't do that.
Parents have wrote, I have noticed a high ammonia-smelling urine in my daughter's pull-ups. I imagine these are the parasites dying and leaving behind their toxins. Is this a good sign to be smelling this?
No.
that woman gets to vote.
Um, I and these are young children. I'm guessing
that is a small child. A
they're
pull
putting
up.
it.
That's a
Are
child.
they putting it in their bottles, their sippy cup? Like I feel like though,
I don't know.
like there's like this bitter taste that would normally keep you from being like, I'm drinking it. So it's like I'm wondering how they're giving the kids this without them like choking on it.
I don't know. The article continues. Ms. Rivera falsely claims that autism is caused by parasites and worms. Routinely reassures parents that these are signs the treatment is working. She refers to symptoms like vomiting and hives as evidence that the body is detoxifying. Her
Okay, so
Instagram account states autism is treatable, a categorically false claim. Thank you to the Independent in the UK for making that clear. um, yeah, the Independent contacted TikTok for a comment. A spokesperson confirmed the account had been deactivated. Meta has been approached for comment, but the article doesn't state whether they responded or not, but she's going to get shut down pretty much.
I mean I don't look for much from Meta, but
Yeah,
they
right.
but like where like the ones who think this whole thing is parasitic or like where are these parasites coming from? Where
They can't tell you.
you know what I mean?
They
Like,
can't tell you,
and these are the same like ones who were like, oh, COVID's not real, but parasites that cause autism are.
brother.
I am
Um,
so confused.
I am made of
Oh
questions.
my gosh. Okay.
Her Amazon storefront previously sold books and equipment promoting these false claims, but the page was removed following a petition led by campaigners.
You mean she's selling stuff?
So, she's selling stuff that claims to
Yeah.
cure autism. Blah 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 blah. So,
Lord help
yeah,
those kids.
she continues to promote. Yeah, she continues to promote. These snake oil cures, and she's definitely headed for a lawsuit. And these, you know, somebody's going to end up in court.
Well, I just
It's
can't.
going to
I
happen.
can't imagine like your advice also like really hurting a child, possibly killing a
Dude.
child. Like that would be you got to live with that.
Yeah,
You know.
somebody randomly came up in a video. I have another social account where I talk, all things, social issues and uh, human rights, intellectual consistency, all that fun stuff. And somebody randomly came in my comment section saying, I happen to mention that I have high cholesterol. I take medication to control it,
Oh, you gonna
which is
die?
working beautifully. Yeah, which is it's been effective for me. Somebody comes and links my high cholesterol to being vaccinated. I'm like, brother, first of all, no. Second of all, you better get out of my comments because
What-
I have a doctorate in the healthcare field and I'm not playing any games because you spreading this kind of information can hurt children. And we're not doing that here. So anyways,
would they try to say like, oh, it's tested in eggs? Like some people they use like the chicken eggs at one point, not for all of the vaccines, but
yeah,
because like eggs cause high cholesterol sometimes. I don't
I
know.
don't know what
I try
link.
to think
There's
about the law.
probably no. Of course you are, because Rebecca, you sweet, wonderful woman, you desire intellectual consistency in your life.
I mean, that wouldn't make sense either because just because it's tested in something doesn't mean it doesn't carry over, but it's
See, there you go. There you go, being intellectually consistent in real time on camera. Ladies and gentlemen, like, share, and subscribe.
these people don't talk to me. They don't. I think it's because
No,
I try.
you repel them.
Well, no, that and I talk too much. By the time I get to a no, that wouldn't work. Like they're done with me. But I'm
Yeah,
yeah.
you would be like 2 or 3, but why would you in? And they're like, I can't do this with you.
Yeah. Or my face might offend them. That tends to happen before I
Yes.
speak.
And then you might feel bad because you feel like you can't make friends. And I come in and say, not those friends. We don't make those friends.
Well, I'm also of the kind of nature that I don't understand human relationships where it's like we have to agree on everything to be friends. I get like
Good point.
now
Good
obviously
point.
um if it's an issue involving like social justice when it comes to
Yeah.
Like if someone around me
Like the
is,
dignity of human beings.
yeah, like if someone around me starts being
Yeah.
racist, I'm just like, okay,
Ugh.
you know, we're not friends, you know,
Let me just go
like
ahead and
that kind of
take the low
thing.
road.
That's different than an opinion on something that is human rights.
Mm,
So like that's different. You got
yeah.
human rights,
Human rights.
and like the different, like, oh, I like this kind of ice cream. I like that kind of ice cream. I think this helps
Totally
this.
fine.
I think this helps that. Okay. But then like you start mentioning human rights. No, that's not an opinion. That's you being a just a not great person. So
It's true. All right. Enough soapboxing. We need to move on to housekeeping for the old podcast. Story time. I escaped a religious cult 7 years ago. Without going into too much detail here, let me just say it was an extremely difficult journey. My mental health spiraled downhill, and I thankfully had enough presence of mind to seek out a therapist to work through what was going on with me. My therapist helped give me context to all the wild things I had walked away from. He was kind, patient, and guided me through what my new normal might look like. I had never had healthy boundaries in my life. Therapy helped show me that, as a result of being in a cult or a high control group, I had never fully become my own person. It's a shocking thing to learn at the age of 32. I learned how to communicate to the people around me what I was going to do, and more importantly, not do with my time, energy, and resources. BetterHelp is the sponsor of this episode, and they're on a mission to make starting therapy easier. BetterHelp is a platform where therapists and their clients can communicate effectively and get the most out of therapy. There's a journal inside the platform for personal reflection, and there are group sessions on a number of different topics available every day. Starting therapy is easy with BetterHelp. Fill out a questionnaire, and you will match with a therapist in as little as a couple of days. One of the best features of BetterHelp is that if the first therapist doesn't feel like the right fit, you can easily switch to another one until you find someone you really connect with. They carefully make sure therapists on the platform are well qualified, and their customer support team is there to help you if you have any questions. With over 7,000 reviews and a 4.5 rating on Trustpilot, BetterHelp is a platform you can trust. If you're struggling and think you'd benefit from a therapy session, go to betterhelp.com/almanac or choose the Poisoner's Almanac during sign up and get 10% off your first month of therapy. Be sure to follow us on whatever platform you are listening on. I'm seeing the Spotify followers. I was reading Spotify comments, so I just on our dashboard, I saw that our Spotify followers are jumping up. Thank you guys so much for that. Thank you in advance for leaving 5-star reviews on whatever platform you're listening. Please be sure to follow us on socials. We got links in the show notes. We now have a dedicated TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram for the podcast itself. And many of you have found the podcast through our personal socials. You can follow us there as well. If you're listening on a mobile device, be sure to screenshot that and post the photo and share that to your socials. We'd love to reshare that and interact with you guys online. The Patreon is up and running. There are links in the show notes to support the show for a $1 United States dollar per month. Uh, the the patrons have perks that include weekly bonus episodes, being able to leave us a voicemail that we will play here on the podcast and and react to, and also you get shouted out by name on the podcast.
not the
Those people
name.
are as follows: 87 Pens Girl, 71 Mara Santiago, Grace Lahan, Genevieve, Nahev Shatreet, Jay Went, Incan Hafner, Kiri Yorsek, Tay of Sunshine, Monique, Shanar, Sue Steves, James Mills, Megan Geiler, Liz B, Willie Wolf NZ, Mama G, Nicole Rivers, Richard Miyako, Heather Nolan, Kaylee, Sasha Rubel, Maya Shostak, Maggie Jarm, Ogre the Viking, Lynn Rocket, Brett Moser, Zaid, Neil Houdini, Nicole Crane, Jefferson Vargas, Carmen Q, Sarah G, Knitting Ninja, Estar, Olive Octopus, Betsy Rich, T-Bug, Christine Moljadi, Morgan Bradingham, Blaufrosch, the aforementioned, Anne Maria, Carl Ziegler Jr., Clyde, Jennifer Wilson Richter, Too Fidgety, Wendy G, Elena MK, Caitlin Martin, Pungrammed 101, Minnesota SPT, Tasha, Stuart Slattery, Simone Valdez, Christian Scradergaard, Maria Anna, Bonnie, Omadi, Ryanel Alara, Kristen Arnold, Aaron Carey, Lynn Simpson, Melissa Emmel, Desiree Davis, Jennifer Ramirez Johnson, Dalek Party, The Warped Witch, Sometimes Jules, Mr. Slave, Dizzy Dancer, Creative Otter, Yadmit, Supergirl Sway, Rachel, Anya Brandt, Ebby, Leah Marie Matson, Lady Digitalis, Jesse, Shay 10, Julia Franzoni, Sparks, Gloria Eichmann, Thomas Huff, From Strings to Things, Soy Kasumi, Jessica Gasparini, Robert Jr., Caitlin, Ron Mack, Donna Lankinese, Lauren Smith, Anna G, Serpentine Fire, and please welcome the newest patron, Melanie the SLP, which I'm pretty sure stands for Speech Language Pathologist, or commonly known as a speech therapist. Welcome, Melanie, a fellow healthcare worker. Glad to have you.
Sometimes I think I need that because my mouth does not say certain things. And like I pronounce things so weird sometimes. But
Send us questions or content suggestions with a comment or a DM on any of the platforms. And for you patrons, leave us a voicemail. We'd love to hear your gorgeous voice.
Also, I was thinking we should do, because we're going to be out of town, not this next week, but the week after. We should do like our first live stream, Patreon live stream for that week too.
Yes.
You and I will be in the same room together anyway too. So
it's true.
And I'm sure our daughter will crash it.
Of course, which is fine. Yeah, that's a great segue into we're about to add another tier to the Patreon, which will include monthly live streams, a private Discord, and watch parties. We will select based on popular demand from the people in that tier of the Patreon. We will watch something together. It'll be maybe a documentary about a particular poison, maybe Severance, a TV show, something like that, something cool. And we could put it to a vote. We could put a just open up in the Patreon for suggestions. People could just comment what they'd love to watch with everyone else, and we will go from there. All right, my dear, we are talking about medication mishaps today.
Well, sort of. Mishaps in terms of like the fact they probably should never have been a thing. We've talked about toxins that we have used, that we have kind of turned into medications, such as digitalis, for instance. For people who have heart failure, we've been able to sort of use the toxic effects for good in some ways, right? Or actually, sort of isolate certain compounds and things like that. So, and also we use some things for medications, even from non-toxic plants as well. But I want to talk about some drugs and treatments that have been made that ended up being more poison than medicine. So, and there's a couple of these. There's quite a few of them. I picked some of the like worst ones, but these are not the only ones. And I also want to talk a little bit about how we go about testing new drugs before their release, and because a lot has changed since the original food and drug laws. So I'm just going to touch on some of that as well. So not the entirety of that subject, because that could be an entire class. Okay. So, and I'm sure those of you in, microbiology or healthcare or research and development know that that's a big subject. So I'm going to talk about the basics of that.
Yeah.
So, so obviously medication testing and all that wasn't always a thing, nor did we always have the ability to do so. The first clinical trial, if you will, was performed in 1537 by a surgeon named Ambrose Pare. But when I say clinical trial, I'm not talking about he got a bunch of volunteers together and he did it, and they did this and that, double-blind studies, and it wasn't that. He basically ran out of a healing oil that he'd been using to treat wounded soldiers. He had nothing else to use, got desperate, so he put together this remedy of egg yolks, rose oil, and turpentine oil.
Yeah.
But he later noticed that the patients receiving this concoction did actually better than those with just the oil. So something was working. Either that or like there was a placebo effect and he was like, yeah, can't really
Huh?
know. I didn't live in the 1500s, thank God. So,
Yeah.
but now we have, like I said, discussed, we've discussed early treatments for various ailments that were tried in the past, whether it be herbs, oils, mercury for syphilis or other infections. I think we talked about mummia last
Oh, we
week.
did.
Eh,
My goodness.
Um,
Somebody literally commented, somebody in the Patreon said, that actually got beyond my ick threshold.
yeah.
So I couldn't listen to that.
It's it should have been beyond the ick threshold of those living in Victorian England and before as well, because they were still doing it at that point. And it's like, none of that seems gross to y'all. But then you want to call like other like people in other nations like, oh, they're savages. They're not like us. Okay. I'm getting off it. I'm getting off it. Also, I mean, they were doing, what is it, radium water not too long ago, because it was healthy. So like, we've talked about a lot of those things that mostly did not work, and actually made some matters worse. We've talked about some of those things, but the idea
Mhm.
of testing a substance for use as a remedy isn't so much new. Um, we actually do have, we've learned a lot and we've come a long way in how we do it now. But there have also been some happy accidents, like Alexander Fleming and his discovery of penicillin.
Yep.
I mean, antibiotics was a huge score for us humans. So now we've already gone over so many advancements in science and medicine, including germ theory, which is sad because it's still being debated by some today. Won't go into that right now. Also using microscopes to see those germs, antibiotics, vaccines, etc. We've come a long way. That's what I'm trying to say. In a pretty short amount of time when you think about it. We've also mentioned an episode on how whole cities and nations have had to learn from some deadly mistakes. The 1858 Bradford Sweets incident, for instance, when someone at the pharmacy mistook arsenic for plaster of Paris, which was plaster of Paris was commonly used in candies and other things as a filler, basically.
That's
Um,
so gross to me.
yeah.
I just can't believe they were
Well,
doing that.
then we also talked about Dr. Wiley, who came in when we talked about the poison squad and was trying to get rid of all these different substances in our foods and stuff. So we talked about that too. But in this instance, yeah, this pharmacist mistook arsenic for plaster of Paris. Candy maker unknowingly made poison candies with said arsenic instead of plaster of Paris. So that did not go well at all.
Mhm. Yep.
We also know now how important it is to label what things are and not to place foods near poisons, among other things. So that's a pretty important thing to know.
Yeah, it
Um,
sounds absurd, but it was totally a thing.
yeah. Now, this, along with many other tragic incidents, the Bradford Sweets incident, I mean, would lead to the mandatory testing of substances meant for ingestion. Pre-market testing of drugs in the U.S. specifically began in 1938 after the sulfatamide elixir tragedy the year before. We talked a little bit about this. It's when that chemist mixed this antibiotic in a solution of diethylene glycol, which is basically antifreeze. It's an antifreeze. Um, we talked about that in our episode on antifreeze slash diethylene ethylene glycol, basically.
Mhm.
Um, but this chemist had not read up on diethylene glycol or ethylene glycol, uh, either being poisonous and deadly. And since no safety tests were required under existing drug laws, and the pharmaceutical company that he was working for did not conduct tests before shipping the elixir to 15 U.S. states in September and October of that year, the majority of the company's shipments, I think, went to Oklahoma and Mississippi, just for reference. But none of those bottles had labels identifying diethylene glycol as an ingredient. So over 100 people died from this error. Many of them were children. It was very sad. So as you can imagine, this and the outrage it caused led Congress to enact the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act of 1938. So this is where We had the FDA at this point. It was put into place a little bit earlier, but this is where they got greater authority to regulate drugs manufactured and sold in the U.S. and required that drugs pass certain tests before they could be marketed. There were laws put into place against misbranding, false labeling. These became more stringent with this after this scandal. Also, in this case, it was argued that an elixir is defined as a substance containing alcohol, but the liquid sulfonamide that had poisoned people had no alcohol. It had the diethylene glycol. So misbranding was the only charge that could be brought against this pharmaceutical company at the time because there just were no laws concerning drug testing and such. So,
The Wild West.
yeah, it took a while, but we came to realize we need to make laws to keep drugs safe. So, yeah, drug labels had to include the common names of all active ingredients with this, and penalties were increased for violations of these new standards. So, um, just a quick, well, I'll just say this first. While testing of substances and toxins on animals was nothing new, this was used back as far as 300 BC in Greece. And I'm not talking about like they were in a laboratory and they were, recording this and they had all this equipment. No, these were just people testing, like, will this kill this animal? Because if it kills this animal, it might kill me. Very sad. Yes, I know.
Just
But
a little bit of sound logic right there. Not bad. Not a bad start.
But fortunately, there have been regulations placed on this practice as well, at least in the U.S. with animal testing, and we'll talk about that again a little later. I can't promise everybody actually listens to these rules, or people are going to people. Okay. So, but for a quick timeline, because we have gone over some of these laws in different episodes, but just to kind of recap, 1906 was when we had that Pure Food and Drug Law, or the Wiley Act. This is when we talked about that episode with the Poison Squad. That was a book that we sort of looked at as a reference, and when the FDA was being built, and when adulteration of food began to be more a public problem. Like we began to realize, like, hey, we really need to get companies to stop putting just random stuff in our food just because it's cheaper. So, but yeah, this officially prevented the manufacture, sale, and transportation of adulterated or misbranded food or drugs. They could no longer say real sugar when it wasn't. um, Active ingredients were also required to be listed on labels. Not maybe all ingredients, but hey, this was a start. Now, this did not require any sort of testing for safety or efficacy, though. Like this was a slow road, really. This did pave the way for the Food and Drug Administration, though, which would be helpful later. And then I just mentioned the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act after the sulfonamide situation, along with requirements for testing for safety and having proof of safety. This also allowed for factory inspections and extended to the testing of cosmetics and devices like therapeutic devices. So it gave the FDA more authority to seize or recall products deemed not safe and to issue quality standards that they could enforce. So yeah, this law also involved better regulations for labeling and advertisement on drugs. So it kind of gave the FDA a little more authority to be like, nope, you can't sell that, right?
Yes, it's important.
It is. Um, Now, the UK also had food and drug regulations and laws. They had them much earlier, which makes sense. The UK has been around a lot longer. Um, it started for them in the mid to late 1800s with regulating poisons like arsenic. I'm sure it goes further back than this, but just hitting on some of the high points here. Which arsenic was used for like pest control at the time, and you could just like go to a chemist and get you some arsenic and kill your husband and be like, "Oh, I didn't do it."
Rebecca, why would any woman want to do that?
Look, I'm not saying some of those husbands didn't deserve it.
Yeah.
I'm not saying they didn't. Okay,
Well, he
moving
had
on.
it coming.
He had it coming. Anyway,
Oh man.
I mean, don't start none, won't be none.
Okay. I'm sorry, I wasn't ready for
I am
that.
spicy today. I am sorry. I am,
Yes.
and I'm
Well,
spicy. My
Rebecca,
coffee's not.
technically,
It's
you're
cold.
spicy every day.
True, but
There's
I'm extra
there's not a
spicy
day where you're
today.
not spicy, kiddo.
Oh, anyway, so, but yes, there have been, yeah, so just stick with me. So in the UK, they have their own like laws. We'll touch on some more of their laws and stuff because we're going to stay on the US just because I want to describe how testing is done and I have more info on US standards. But it is similar. The UK's way of doing things as well. So just kind of stick with me on that. I'm going to hit on any specific differences later on. But so there have been several amendments to the 1938 Act in the US, including the Durham-Humphrey Amendment in 1951. This sets the difference between prescription and over-the-counter drugs, essentially.
Oh.
Um, another,
I wonder if the Humphrey there is Hubert Humphrey. He was I believe he was a congressman for years,
maybe.
and he is also the man for whom the Minnesota Metrodome was named in Minneapolis, Minnesota, where the Minnesota Vikings and the Minnesota Twins played their games.
See,
Fun fact.
when I think of Humphrey, I think of the guy that came in Death in Paradise. He became the detective in the
Yes,
third,
Humph.
fourth season. He was funny. I liked him. He was funny.
He was.
But yeah, but yeah, this just set the difference between what should be prescription and what could be over the counter. Um, Another amendment came in 1962 after a certain medicine was found to be more toxic than effective, and we're going to talk about this one for sure. I'm not going to mention every single amendment and every single law throughout
Hmm.
the history of our nation or the UK or everywhere else because that would take days. Um,
Yes.
you can honestly, if you want to, you can definitely look up the timelines of these different acts and amendments and things like that. But I'm just hitting, like I said, on the
Yeah.
high points that kind of go with what we're talking about today.
Right. But even though you're not going to mention all of them, you
Yeah.
still read more legislation than our current set of congressmen.
Well, I mean, I find it very interesting. It's just
uh,
because, like, without regulation, you're gonna have poisoning. You just are because there are gonna be their
yes.
companies are not. People think that companies are like just beneficent, and it's like they want money.
No.
They don't know
No.
science. They may have some scientists working for them. This just like health insurers have doctors working for them. Okay,
Hmm.
they're gonna do what they're
Yep.
supposed to do for that company, and I'm here. I am being spicy again, but it's like we have seen in the past that if a company can save money by choosing a less effective or unsafe ingredient and get away with it, they will. And if regulations aren't in place, they can't be held liable for that. So
Hmm.
it's important. And I've actually had a lot of people sending me DMs about issues with what's going on with milk, about how I think there's being less testing with milk. And I mean, I kind of saw that coming with whatever cuts were going to be coming to the FDA and stuff, milk and water, drinking water, even. So, I mean, just pay attention to where you live and what's going on. I think certain places though, like Costco, Kroger, there's a few other places that do like third party testing on their stuff. So for now, I mean, but yeah, it's just it is important to keep up with what's going on. It's not the only thing. If you live in Georgia, South Carolina, Alabama, in the South, they just had a recall on tomatoes again. That can cause serious illness. And I think on beef products somewhere. There's always a recall on something, though.
It's true.
You see it a lot with certain greens that are like prepackaged in the bags,
Yep.
unfortunately. Yeah,
Hmm.
there can be like salmonella outbreaks or E. coli outbreaks. It's just something to watch. Pay attention to those kinds of recalls. Now, the medication we're going to discuss that kind of brought about this other amendment, though, we briefly discussed this particular medication in a bonus episode, but a lot of poison friends have been DMing me on Instagram to talk about it. And I think it's an important one to talk about, whether you are a patron or not, because it's a pretty big subject, and it is a pretty big scar on our medical sort of history, not just America. I mean like worldwide. So we're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about thalidomide.
Yeah.
And honestly, everybody DMing me about thalidomide has been kind of the inspiration for where this episode came from, because thalidomide is not the only drug that has had to be taken off the market or more highly restricted. And thalidomide is actually not off the market. It's highly restricted, which we're going to go over that in just a little bit. So this was a medication that was sold under several brand names, such as Conturgan. I was not alive at this point. Okay. Thalidomide, which I always think it's funny when like brand names sound almost like the generic names, like just call it thalidomide. Thalidomide. It was, I guess they can't, but it was originally developed in the 1950s by a Swiss pharmaceutical company, then introduced as Conturgan by a German pharmaceutical company named Chemie Grunethal. I might be saying that wrong. I'm not even sure if they're
Mhm.
still a thing, but it was initially advertised as a sedative that would allow for deep sleep without the usual hangover effect or drug dependency. And I have to tell you, if something sounds too good to be true, it probably is. Um, so it was marketed in the UK by Distillers Biochemicals Limited under the brand name Distaval from April 1958 until late 1961. Elsewhere, it's been known as Asmaval, Distaval Forte, Tensaval, Valgis, Valgrain, just a number of different, it's had a number of different names depending on where it's been sold. It also made it late to Canada, being approved there in like 1960 and sold in 1961 under the names Calamol, and I believe this was Kevadon, but my computer changed it for some reason. I was like, that is not what it was. That is not what it was.
You're
Um,
It's like your computer waits for you to scroll up to change
and
words.
I
They're always a
remember,
surprise to you.
if it autocorrects, I know, because I'm like, that's not what it said, because I remember
You immediately see it and you're like, how dare you?
it was
How
not
dare all of
It
you?
was not Nevadon. I'm pretty sure it was
So
started with a
great.
K. But anyway, but 2 months after this went on sale, pharmaceutical companies sent physicians letters warning about the risk of birth defects. So it wasn't on sale very long there anyway. So it wasn't until March 1962 that both of these drugs were banned from the Canadian market by the Directorate, and soon after, physicians were basically warned to destroy all their supplies. Now, after its initial release, it was actually pretty popular with pregnant women because it showed effectiveness in helping with morning sickness, because it helped prevent nausea and vomiting, basically.
Mhm.
In many countries, thalidomide was sold over the counter, so you didn't even need a prescription. Doctors also prescribed it when they felt it appropriate, though, for sleep problems, depression, headaches, colds, flu, nausea, and, as I mentioned, morning sickness for those who were pregnant. Oh, and it was also in some cough medicines. Now,
Wow.
while it did go through testing on animals and then some light testing on humans, it showed little to no side effects or toxic effects. What was not considered, however, was teratogenic effects, or like effects on fetal development. They didn't consider effects on pregnancy. This would prove to be a horrible mistake and result in some pretty horrible birth defects for thousands of babies.
Yeah.
Um, Now, concerning women in studies, we're going to actually talk about clinical studies in just a little bit. But what I do want to mention is that women were excluded from clinical trials, except under rare circumstances, until 1993. So they wouldn't have tested
I mean,
this on women anyway.
it's hysterical.
Um,
It's like I
so,
recently started digging into the dark triad personality types, like narcissistic, psychopathic, coercive control stuff. Because I escaped a cult and all that fun stuff. So I over the course of the years trying to untangle all these things. Of course, you're going to end up, bumping up against dark triad stuff. All of the data, or the vast majority of the data that we've ever had about these personality types, comes from incarcerated convicts, and it was all self-reporting. So a clinical narcissist has been incarcerated, and they just let them describe, their. But the way that these people would interact with a task like that is to gain power over someone.
mhm.
Regardless of if they ever get out of prison, they will just use this situation like they have used all other interactions with humans in the past. And so only recently did data actually start to come out that wasn't self-reported by convicts.
Yeah, well, I feel like you can watch like interviews or court tapes on some of these people, like Ted Bundy,
Mhm.
like, and
Yes.
see like there's something different going on
Mhm.
with this
Yep.
person. And there's a
Yep.
whole group though that will still be like there was a whole group of women who loved him. Like he
Yeah,
was
that part.
he was brutally assaulting and killing women, and there were women who were like, "But he's cute."
Dismembering women.
I'm sorry. What? uh
Like he would SA their bodies when they were
mhm.
alive and deceased.
But
And
he was known to be charming, and he was not stupid. He went to law school.
he
But
did.
he also
He grew up.
he had a big ego, so he
Oh,
also
humongous.
and you could see that.
Mhm.
But yeah,
Yeah.
it's crazy to watch, uh, just to watch some of that stuff and see how they act and how other people respond. I mean,
Yeah.
Charles Manson
Yes.
had many
Yes.
followers.
Yeah.
So,
Forgive me for getting you off track
no,
or whatever,
no.
but just in line with how miserably incomplete the data set was,
Mhm.
it's the same for the dark triad personality types.
Yeah, it's just really, because the fact that women were not included in clinical studies until the 90s, it really set back women's health because they were basically like, we'll study men. And I mean, women can just be like men, right? Except for we're not going to pay them as much as men, but we're going to treat their bodies like they're men's bodies and just act like they don't, the uterus doesn't matter,
Sure.
you know?
Sure.
So like now we've got like with endometriosis, for instance, like we're just finding out so many like new things about like we could have been so far with some of this, not just endometriosis. I'm just using that particular thing
Yeah,
as
yeah.
an
Women's
example.
health in general.
Yeah. So
The data, when you told me, we're both working healthcare, we understand clinical research data. When you started kind of schooling me on the lack of, robust clinical data for women's health in general, I was like, are you serious?
yeah,
They don't know what causes X, or is this why, you would say that? I mean, they kind of throw birth control at everything in the
yeah.
OBGYN clinic.
No, it's the same with mental health too, though. I mean,
Mhm.
like autism. Most people when they think autism, um, from back in the day, they think of the typical like little white boy
Mhm.
like symptoms, signs of autism, and it doesn't always look the same across the board. Like obviously it's a spectrum, but it also differs among women, people of color, ethnicity, culture. I mean, you can't just look at this one bit of and say that applies to everybody. Like it just doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way with medicine, with
Yeah.
medical things either, because like this one
Mhm.
drug that I'm taking may not work for other people. Some
Yeah.
people like I took Zoloft and it made me whacked out of my mind, but other
Mhm.
people take it and they're like, this has changed my life, right?
Works great.
So like it can be very different.
Yeah.
Things can be very different. in those ways. Now, with thalidomide, though, it was pretty much had universal bad things happen when it came to pregnancy and childbirth. When taken early in pregnancy, thalidomide can lead to such birth defects as significant limb differences. So you have like the shortening of one or more limbs. It could be born without one or more limbs, the fusing of fingers, all kinds of stuff. I think I sent you some pictures
Yes, we got some really good photos
those
here.
who were born from after the mothers had taken thalidomide, and this was not something the mothers knew at all. They did not know this was going to take place or that this did this. This is a woman here. She's actually, I think she's still alive today. But yes, she was born with multiple limb deformities,
Mm-hmm.
and I think she actually works for a thalidomide organization, like to sort of support others who were born with the same
Oh
kind of
wow.
defects. But yeah,
Yeah.
you could see a lot of these like differences with like limbs. Also,
Mm-hmm.
facial deformities, facial paralysis, sight loss, hearing loss, severe organ damage. This includes like with the heart, the kidneys, the brain. It also led to thousands of miscarriages and stillbirths. Many babies were born with deformities, died within months of being born sometimes. So it only took one tablet to cause serious defects, and it was later discovered that it was most likely to cause such defects during the first 3 months of pregnancy. So like early on when development is starting up. It took about 5 years for the connection to be made, though, between these birth defects. Some were not always obvious at first, by the way. Some could be like more internal. And the drug thalidomide, and by then it was being sold in like 49 countries. Now, it was actually not approved by the FDA in America because there had been some reports and concern that it could cause that it had been causing nerve damage in adults and limbs in adults after long-term use. So like they were like, I want to see more data. Pharmacologist Francis Oldham Kelsey, who was the medical officer at the FDA at this time, rejected like several requests to market and distribute thalidomide. I think they were like sending request after request at least like 6 times, and she was like, no, I said what I said. No. But this did not stop an American pharmaceutical company who was interested in making and selling it from sending samples to like 1,200 doctors in America in 1959. So it still
Okay.
got here, but not in a widespread way. I think they were thinking, well, the FDA will eventually approve it. Like they were predicting that for some reason. Yeah. So these doctors handed them out to like a good 20,000 patients, 600 of whom were pregnant at the time, and they were handing them out under the guise of early clinical trial. And so like the doctors were like, okay, this sounds cool. They didn't really know a lot of what was going on behind the scenes. And it's not like back then you could just go online and like research like what's up with
Right.
this new drug,
Sure. If it came from your doctor, you 100% assumed
Yeah,
it's
or
perfectly
I
safe.
mean, even the doctors weren't like able to just quickly get on there and be like, let me look up some research real quick, right? I mean, they could read in certain journals
No.
and things like that, but it took time for some of these things to show up in journals and things like that. Now, while the drug was not officially approved and sold in the US, there were some children here who were affected. The official number that the FDA gives is 17 children. Some have said more like 20, but according to others, like Jennifer Vanderbees, she's a journalist and author of Wonder Drug, the secret history of thalidomide in America and its hidden victims. The number may be closer to 200 children. Now, unlike
Yeah.
other countries who later did offer some support to thalidomide survivors, the US has not done so.
Mhm.
Now, in Germany, the drug was sold between 1957 and 1961 and caused birth defects in at least 6,000. Only 2,000 of those survived. According to, and this is babies,
Yeah.
according to thalidomidesociety.org, and this is a quote from them, there is no absolute figure for how many babies were affected by thalidomide, as many were miscarried, stillborn, or died soon after birth. It has most recently been estimated that over 24,000 babies were born worldwide, of which 2,000 were born in the UK. In addition, based on medical evidence, experts conservatively estimate that those babies stillborn and miscarried due to thalidomide would add a further 123,000 worldwide, of which 10,000 would have been in the UK. These figures do not include those babies born alive who became victims of state infanticide and so were never registered. So,
what is that?
Basically, either neglected or killed because of their defect.
Like they would
they
would end the life of a newborn child?
Yeah.
Like it was medically necessary? Like there was no way the child would survive? Is that what that means?
Well, maybe some of that, but also like calling it that and them actually just getting rid of the child, thinking he's he's going to die in a few months anyway, that kind of thing. They were parents who were told to put their children in foster care because they're probably not going to live very long anyway. As well.
I am aghast.
Mm-hmm. I think the little girl holding the flag, the picture I sent you, she was one of those children who they didn't expect to live very long. And actually, she's the same girl that was in that the older lady who was in that picture. That's the same.
That's her.
Mm-hmm, that's the same girl.
Oh my gosh.
But they didn't expect her to live very long, and so they were like, just put her in foster care because which is sad because
there she is as a baby.
Which is really sad because it's like, no, I'm not going to put my child. I want to be there for my child regardless. Yeah, this is her grown up.
It's unconscionable. Wow. And she's got tattoos on both of those arms too.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Like that's like an identity marker, so to speak, because normally you can have an aversion to any sort of attention being drawn to any part of you that is disabled or disfigured. And she got these tattoos to kind of as a public display of I am who I am.
Yeah, I think she went on to have her own children and stuff. I think about the one positive thing about thalidomide is it didn't mess with genetics, so it didn't carry over past the generation of children born to those mothers. So that was her as a little girl. Yeah.
That's wild.
So, but many did go on to live somewhat normal lives. Obviously, they had some obstacles, some struggles to get through as well. But let's see. The connection was finally suggested by an Australian doctor, Dr. William McBride, in a letter published in The Lancet in 1961. Another physician noted to have been one of the first to alert others to the link between thalidomide and the deaths and birth defects was German physician. I'm going to get this name wrong. I looked this guy up in other places and really couldn't find a whole lot. Dr. Widukind Linz. Widukind? It's Widukind. And that's the first time I've ever seen this first name, but pretty cool first name. I just don't know how to say it. Dr. Linz. But I wanted to mention him because he was also mentioned as someone who had found this link, and I didn't want to leave anybody out. So now the German pharmaceutical, the German pharmaceutical company, Chemie Grünenthal, formally withdrew the drug from the market November 26th, 1961, and then UK distributors of the drug did the same just a few days later. The UK government warning was not issued until May of 1962, however. But even then, the drug was also present in a number of other medications whose labeling did not use the word thalidomide. Remember I said sometimes they were in cough medicines. Consequently, at least 20 children were born during and after September of 1962, showing typical thalidomide impairments. more than 9 months after the drug itself was withdrawn. So, like, it was still in some other things. There wasn't a warning or recall on those things. And so that sucks. Now, later trials with rabbits demonstrated the fetal toxicity of the drug in 1962. This was months after the withdrawal of thalidomide from the German market. So they were able to prove, like, yeah, this is what is causing, what did cause that. So now, so it could just confirmed, and these results were confirmed through additional trials with several other species of small mammals and 8 species of monkeys over the following 10 years. So it's pretty specific. Now, the German drug maker issued its first apology to the victims and families in 2012. A little late, but okay. In 1968, Kimi Grunenthal was brought to trial in Germany. The company settled the case out of court, and arrangements were made to compensate German victims. No one was found guilty of any crimes within. Now, the distillers company in the UK also reached compensation settlements with UK victims that year. The Thalidomide Trust was created to administer such compensation. Similar support funds gave out compensation to victims in other nations, such as in Australia and New Zealand. Like I said, this was sold in like 49 different countries by the time it was the connection was realized. Oldham Kelsey, the FDA medical officer that was like, no, we don't want your drug. She was actually awarded the President's Award for Distinguished Federal Civilian Service by President Kennedy in 1962 for not allowing thalidomide to be approved for sale in the U.S. And while there were some people still affected in the U.S., she basically stopped it from getting too widespread. You know, so basically she wasn't going to let it in, even though there were some people just giving out samples they shouldn't have been giving out. But here we are. She was also inducted into the National Women's Hall of Fame in 2000. But still, there has been no financial support for those who have suffered effects in America. They've been just kind of swept under the rug, out of sight, out of mind sort of deal, which is just wrong. Now,
Wow.
yeah, this tragedy that went on way too long before being discovered, mind you. I mean, you've got people taking this for what, a good 5 years before even it being even connected, and then maybe a year or two after that even. But it also led to changes in how many nations test and regulate medications. In America, this was seen in the 1962 Kefauver-Harris Amendment to the 1938 FDC Act, which I mentioned earlier. And this mandated that drug makers prove their drug works before requesting approval. I think that sounds really general, but through this, they were able to prevent things like thalidomide happening again. In the UK, the thalidomide debacle led to the Medicines Act of 1968, which required tightened controls on medications and more extensive testing for safety. Drugs marketed to pregnant women were also required to show safety for use during pregnancy and not solely on animal testing studies. A system named the Yellow Card Scheme was also set up to allow physicians to report previously unlisted side effects of medications. We have something similar. I'll talk about that in a minute. Now, in Germany, the new Medicinal Products Act of 1978 was put into effect, mandating a process for the testing and approval of medications, including testing for teratogenic testing and requiring manufacturers to prove safety and efficacy via pharmacological and clinical trials. And then other nations created similar acts and laws. Like I said, if I went through every single nation's laws, we would be here a long time. Now, thalidomide is not completely gone. Like I mentioned, it's been heavily restricted. It has been used as a treatment for leprosy after being found to be effective for the condition in 1964 and then again in 1967. This one doctor tried it in 1964, found it effective, and then they did some testing later on in 1967, and they were like, yeah, okay. So, but it is also used in the treatment for AIDS-related conditions and for some cancers like multiple myeloma. In the UK, thalidomide is only prescribed by a doctor under strict controls. Women taking thalidomide are required to use 2 forms of birth control and take regular pregnancy tests. Men are required to use contraception when taking thalidomide. People who are prescribed thalidomide undergo counseling and are basically talked through the risks beforehand. Now, it's also prescribed under similar regulations in the US, Australia, Canada, South Africa, India, Colombia, and Brazil. But there have been newer cases of birth defects being reported in Brazil because of medication sharing and not enough education on the medication itself. So I don't know how restricted it is in some of these nations, if you get my drift.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as of March 2022, 443 people were still living with thalidomide impairments in the United Kingdom, and an estimated, they said, like less than 3,000 worldwide. And it's just kind of hard to find an exact number worldwide. For like the UK, they have that thalidomide trust, and so they're able to check and see like who's still a part of that.
Right.
So what kind of testing are drugs put through today? Like I said, I'm going over the basics, so all of my like research and development people out there, don't come for me just because I didn't mention every single thing. That would take forever. I'm going to give the
Or
basics.
please come for us in the comments. It drives up engagement.
Yeah. Or, if you want to mention something that you are like, hey, there's also this cool thing that like I totally forgot to mention, add to the discussion, right?
Sure.
But just know that I'm only talking about some basic stuff here. Now, here in the US, there are various kinds and phases, of clinical trials. And an interventional clinical trial is the kind that you see like new drugs go through. So we're going to look at that in specifically. There's also things like observational clinical trials, whatever. Now, phase 1 trials test for the safety of a drug, the best dose, the best way to administer the drug. This may involve like 20 to 100 healthy volunteers that are monitored throughout. You may hear such terms as pharmacodynamics, which just means what does the drug do to the body? Basically, that's what they're looking for there. And pharmacokinetics. This basically just means, well, what does the body do to the drug? Like, how is it metabolized, for instance?
Mm-hmm.
Certain trials may test drugs using terminally ill patients, such as advanced cancer or AIDS patients. The goal is just to learn the maximum tolerated dose that does not produce unacceptable side effects, right? You're testing for the safety. The reason I mentioned it maybe using terminally ill patients is sometimes like these patients don't have another choice, and we could use data also for future patients as well. So
Yeah.
there's a whole ethics committee. There's a whole like process.
Mm-hmm. Institutional Review Board.
Yeah.
That's what they
So
call them.
now this makes sense because if it's not safe, there's really no reason to continue. This takes several months, and about 70% of drugs make it through this phase to the next. Okay. Now, phase 2 studies determine the effectiveness of an experimental drug on a particular disease or condition in approximately 100 to 300 volunteers, so a little bit bigger pool of people. This phase may last from several months to 2 years, so it can go on for a little while. Researchers also look for the best dose and frequency for the specific illness observed in patients. Here, if not already, you'll see such terms as randomized, double-blind, placebo. You'll see these studies mention words like that. For reference, randomized just means that participants were placed in groups at random. They weren't like chosen to be in certain groups or chosen because like, hey, I know such and such has this going, like it's randomized, right? So they're either going to be randomly put into the treatment group, the placebo group, or a control group. And this just helps avoid bias in a study. The treatment group is getting the tested drug, basically. The placebo group is getting a placebo, this sort of inactive pill or treatment. think like, a sugar pill, something that isn't actually doing anything. It's not meant to do anything. And then the control group is typically getting an already approved drug to kind of compare the test drug to. So like a drug that does something similar, but it's already been approved. They're trying to see like, well, does this new drug do this better? Or like, how does it compare?
Uh-huh.
And this is important too, because like, if that you're taking a placebo, or not knowing you're taking a placebo, like you can kind of gauge like you don't have that placebo effect kind of making bias in the clinical trial either, where it's like, well, I'm taking this pill, I feel better all of a sudden, but it's like not because of the pill, it's because like you expect to feel better.
That's right.
That makes sense.
The placebo effect is fascinating.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
it's really something it literally created the need for RCTs,
I'm just gonna
randomized control trial.
write down that for a bonus episode: study the placebo effect.
Ooh, it's amazing.
I've got a lot of ideas coming for bonus episodes, so just writing those down.
Yeah, and just real quick, it made me think of from the the cult that I escaped. The foundations of that cult are kind of the post World War II healing evangelists that would travel around and do tent revivals and pray for healings and all that fun stuff. Alongside preaching divine healing, these people would also teach a principle called positive confession,
Oh yeah.
where you must align what you say with what you want to see happen in your physical body.
Well, in a way, it's like manifesting to some, right?
Yes, you can see it in other,
Yeah.
other parts of society, yeah. But these ministers would claim that just gobs of people were healed in the tent revival meeting they did. These people had been taught about positive confession. So if you ask them after receiving prayer, are you better? Is there any positive improvement? They would say, oh, yes, I'm healed, brother, in the name of Jesus. It's like, no, I'm not. Like me now, I would say, I'm not asking about what you want to have happen. I'm asking you to report, do you still have cancer?
Yeah, but there's a level of
This kind of thing.
shame that goes with speaking negative too, or
Exactly.
negative. I was
Exactly.
always called cynical a lot in that in that culture, because I was like,
Yes.
oh, I've got I think I'm catching a cold. Don't say that. Don't say that, because if you say it, it's going to happen. And it's like,
Don't claim it. Don't speak it.
it's happening because there's a germ in my body, because I went out, I shouldn't have gone out, and I should have washed my hands better. And but like they also use it in a way.
Never leaving my house again.
I do. I get so mad when I get sick. I'm like,
Oh,
but
you do.
I do.
You do.
And it's obviously getting sick. It happens. Germs are everywhere. You
It
can't.
does. It does.
You just
Yes.
whatever. But
It's a part of interacting with the microbiology in the physical universe we occupy. It's okay. But
yeah.
what these people are preconditioned to report that they have been healed. And it's entire denominations of churches would investigate somebody like William Branham, for example, who's the most famous of these post World War II healing evangelists. He would claim, but first of all, he would carry out bags full of cash.
Oh yeah.
Okay. He was a grifter. He would say gobs of people were healed. Formal investigations would be done by denominations of churches that he had visited and held meetings at. They would not be able to find a single case of somebody confirmed that has been divinely healed. Like it was that sinister and convoluted. So anyway, all that to say, the placebo is powerful.
Well, I also like they also hold it against you too, where it's like, well, if you aren't healed, then it's your fault because you didn't manifest it, basically.
That's right.
And they don't say manifest. Right. They think manifesting is probably like witchcraft, but it's literally the same thing.
But at the same time, they'll use the word manifesting in a different sense.
Yeah.
It's just intellectual.
I have no problem with people speaking positive things over their life. It's the control factor of, well, if you don't do it, it's not going to happen for you, and it's your fault. give me your
Yes.
money. Like that,
That's known
that
as,
bothers
yeah,
me.
and I would call that toxic positivity.
Yeah.
You are being positive in order to insulate yourself from the things that you should be facing head on.
Now,
That is not mentally healthy.
that is one thing I don't have a problem with. I tend to be more of a realist, but
Totally.
most people have called me cynical for that reason. But I think
Yeah.
it's interesting though because you bring up that it was post World War II. I think
Yeah.
when there are such events as wars, huge things that happen, you see an uptick in certain spiritual things, and it's
Yes.
like not just mainstream religions either, but like spiritualism after World War One, like because
Yes.
people are looking for answers. What happened to my loved one that never came home? They
Uh-huh.
go and they try to do seances. They just want some closure. They want some sort
Yes.
of comfort, and then it
Yes.
turns into you've got these like groups being led by these powerful men or even women who are
Mhm.
like, yes, follow me, give me your money, and they end up getting kind of trapped in that
Yep.
situation based on their it's these people who prey on those sort of vulnerabilities,
Yes.
and
That's right.
it's just
And take a wild guess
interesting.
who routinely visited spiritualist, communities.
Oh yeah, I know you're gonna say. I was gonna say Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, but he did too. William Branham.
Right. William Branham.
Now,
He would go there to, figure out more ways to steal from people.
yeah,
That's what he was
yeah,
doing.
yeah, and we did a bonus episode that I find out that I found really interesting. I've always been interested in the relationship between Sir Arthur Conan Doyle and hang on, it'll come to me, the magician guy,
Houdini.
Houdini. Yeah,
Yes.
they had this sort of friendship slash rivalry because you had
Mhm.
Doyle, who was super big he got really big into the spiritualist movement, which is funny because his character, Sherlock Holmes, like, would never. But like, he did. And part of it was because there was a lot that went into it, but a part of it was his son. I don't think he ever made it back from the war. So it was a lot of sad stuff underlying it. But he was very
Yes.
interested in it. He did talks on it. He would go on like tours talking about it. But his friend um, Houdini was like super skeptical. He would actually show up to seances and just like kind of expose them for being fakes. And like he would do that because he was just like, he hated watching people get manipulated or cheated into thinking like, oh, here's your loved one. It's just, seeing
Yeah.
people get taken advantage of like that was
Yeah.
something he hated. So, but yeah, we did it. We did a bonus episode on that
Yeah.
just because I loved that whole like relationship there.
Yep.
And I know I got totally off track here, but yeah. So placebos, crazy, crazy stuff.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
the point of a placebo is not knowing that you're taking the placebo in this case, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Randomized.
So now blinding is also important to preventing bias. Single blinding means the participants do not know what group they're in or what drug they're getting, but the researchers do. Double blinding, which I believe is more common and more effective, means that neither the participants nor the researchers know which group each person is in or what drug they're being given. So it can be, they can also be observed in a way that doesn't involve bias. Because like if you
Mhm.
know someone's getting this drug, then you'll be like, well, I expect to see these things, and maybe then I will.
Yeah.
So
And especially as a healthcare worker, you want to find a solution to a problem.
you do, and so
But even that
yeah.
bias can be dangerous.
Mhm. Now, approximately 33% of experimental drugs which pass phase 1 and 2 will go on to phase 3. Okay. Now, phase 3 studies are conducted at like multiple centers with several hundred to several thousand patients for whom the drug is intended. These are like this is massive scale testing of a drug, and it'll provide continued just generation of data over time on a drug's safety and efficacy. So this is like next level testing, and the it takes money, it takes time, So now, as in phase 2, most phase 3 studies are randomized and blinded, and information from this particular phase often gets used in the medication inserts later on if approved. So there's a lot of data to be had in this phase, and they can kind of use that to explain the drug to people who are taking it. Now, I know some people like open up these drug pamphlets or like that are inside their little drug thingies, and you're just like, okay, right? Like, because it is kind of Greek if you don't speak. That's the whole
Uh-huh.
scientific jargon stuff. Um, but yeah, this is where some of that comes from, though. Now, this phase, as I mentioned, it can last several years um, because it just takes time. Once this phase is complete, a manufacturer for the drug company may request approval from the FDA. This would be a new drug application or an NDA to market it.
Not to be confused with the non-disclosure agreement.
No. Although I'm sure there's been some of those between drug companies as well.
Sure.
Now, all of the data gathered goes into this NDA, this new drug application, for the FDA to consider. If approved, it enters phase 4, which is essentially the monitoring of it as it gets used by the public. You may remember some drugs being recalled by the FDA long after they were approved, like ranitidine, which wasn't that long ago, actually. It can do this in phase 4 if use of the drug among the public proves like unsafe or ineffective over time, or something comes up
Yeah.
later that shows that it might be carcinogenic, which I think was the deal with ranitidine. Also, Benadryl.
I feel like yeah, yeah, Benadryl. I feel like metformin is on the way there because a lot of
Maybe.
primary doctors are taking diabetic patients off of metformin because
Yeah,
of long-term usage side
there
effects.
can be things that come up later instead because studies are still being done, meta-analysis are still being done by various people and things like that. So researchers, doctors that may not even be a part of that particular drug company, which is a good thing. You want that. You want people who are not part of those companies doing further study.
Mhm.
But like I mentioned, Benadryl, I don't want to freak anybody out because Benadryl is still in the market. Benadryl is still thing, and doctors will tell you to take Benadryl short term for things like if you have an acute allergic reaction, Benadryl's fine. But if you were say taking it every night to sleep, like taking it for a long period of time, like daily, it has been shown to kind of lead to early onset Alzheimer's, dementia, that
Oof.
kind of thing. It can affect the brain that way. So good for acute purposes,
Mhm.
allergic reactions helps with the whole histamine situation, but not so great if you're taking it all the time, right?
Yeah,
And that's, this is something they find out in phase 4, where more studies are being done over a longer period of time.
yeah, yeah.
Now, I mentioned women were excluded from clinical trials until like 1993. The Food and Drug Administration actually created a policy to exclude women of reproductive potential from phase 1 and phase 2 clinical trials unless they had a life threatening condition. This was actually in part due to the thalidomide tragedy. So, this was back in the day when they did this. But instead of just pregnant women, it got applied to women on birth control, those abstaining from sex. So this actually hindered women's health, as I mentioned. So instead of being like, oh, they just mean pregnant women, they took it to mean all women. And so, like, that's one reason why you didn't see women in a lot of clinical studies.
Huh.
Um, Now, the US Congress passed a law in 1993 requiring women to play a role in clinical research. So just there's that. Moving on, even though like we're like 51% of the population for the longest time, we were not considered,
Yep.
you know, a part of that. Now, for further reference, you may see words like in vivo or in vitro concerning testing of new drugs or in research. In vivo is what is taking place during clinical trials. Typically, is the study within a living organism. So, human trials, animal trials, in vivo. In vitro means outside the body or in glass. So, this is your test tube petri dish stuff. They both have their pros and cons. In vivo is more accurate concerning how something reacts within a living body, while uh, in vitro offers more of a controlled environment, but may not be great representation of a more complex system, that kind of thing. So it can be like in vitro can be good for like preclinical trials, which I'm going to talk about. And I didn't mention preclinical trials yet because some things have changed a bit. These include animal trials, whether it's invertebrates or vertebrates, as well as some, like I said, in vitro studies. Obviously, there are special considerations like pregnancy when it comes to studies. Studies can be initiated in pregnant women if preclinical studies, including studies on pregnant animals, clinical studies, including studies on non pregnant women, have been conducted and provide data for assessing potential maternal and fetal risks. There is no greater than minimal risk to the fetus or the purpose of the research is the development of important biomedical knowledge that cannot be obtained by any other means. So, drug studies should not be conducted in pregnant women if there is no anticipated use of the drug during pregnancy. It kind of, makes sense. Or if fetal risk is known or highly suspected, also makes sense. Basically, a good start here is either pregnant animal studies and in vitro test tube style studies first. There's also like AI generated toxicity type studies as well. Okay. As of 2022, the FDA no longer requires animal testing prior to human clinical trials. It does not ban it either, but it only promotes it in certain circumstances now with like certain considerations. Because this is like a job, like I mentioned, AI might actually be great for, like toxicity models. They can look at that using computer models now. Also, the use of cell lines in vitro studies may replace animal studies more and more. And this is great because we do want to be ethical, with how we do that. In cases where animal studies are still needed, there are, of course, standards set by an ethics board, that kind of thing. So I mentioned I would compare the systems for drug testing in the US to that of the UK. So let's do that now. It's not a whole lot. Basically, the UK differs in just a few ways, including the type of agencies they use to monitor and regulate drugs and devices. Approval time, the US tends to actually be slower uh, with all of the studies and approval and stuff like that. So, and there's actually been some controversy, some concern over that because it seems like in other places, people are able to get care using meds that are actually helpful sooner, but at the same time, like the testing for safety is also important. So it's like, give and take.
Yeah.
Of course, then again, we do have we've had medications that were approved for safety and then ended up being removed. So I mean, like you kind of have to look at like, well, how many has it really helped as much to take so long? But yeah, so also how funds are handled, developmental strategies, those kinds of things. So little differences here and there, but overall they're similarly oriented to safety and efficacy as most nations who govern and regulate medications are. Basically, any of those nations who probably dealt with the thalidomide debacle and had to learn and grow from that, or any other sort of medication medication situation. Okay, so that was a lot of info on regulation of drugs and testing of drugs and clinical talk. So let's talk about a few more actual medications that have been actually more toxic than good, I suppose. This one is Vioxx. I believe it's also Rofecoxib. Rofecoxib. Okay. It's a good thing it's not there anymore because it's Vioxx. Rofecoxib. Rofecoxib.
Rofecoxib? Hang
Rofecoxib.
on, let me look that up. Rofecoxib.
I can't do
Is
all
that
the
it?
consonants. Yes.
There it is.
Rofecoxib.
Rofecoxib. Yeah, gosh, what a strange collection of
Mm,
vowels and consonants that is.
yeah, good
Okay.
riddance. Anyway, I'll be calling it Vioxx so that it doesn't take me an hour to get through this medication, just trying to say its name. Vioxx would be the brand name, I believe, anyway. So it was an NSAID, which is a non-steroidal. Oh my God. Now it's messed me up. It's completely messed me up. It's
Just restart your computer.
Shut up. Oh, you mean up here? Yeah, I should do that.
Right.
It's a non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drug. Think like ibuprofen, naproxen, those kinds of drugs. This was FDA approved in 1999 and manufactured by Merck for the treatment of pain in patients with arthritis, whether it's osteoarthritis, rheumatoid arthritis, juvenile rheumatoid arthritis, also for acute pain, migraine, dysmenorrhea, which is like period pains, like bad cramping pains and stuff like that. It was also sold as Ceox and Ceox, just with an extra E. So,
okay.
interesting. They were like, just add an E and it'll be a separate thing. It'll be fine. And it was a prescription medication. You could find it in like tablet form or like an oral liquid. And it was quite popular at one time. It was likely being prescribed for a good 80 million people at once worldwide. It was later tested and approved in some places for premenstrual acne. I believe they did testing in India for that. Anyway, what was pretty cool about this particular NSAID, though, was that it did not carry the same risk factors for gastric ulceration like the others do. If you don't know, the like ibuprofen, other NSAIDs like that, taking them too consistently, too much, if you're taking them every day, all the time, they can cause gastric ulcers, bleeding, internal bleed, like, ulcer bleeding, that kind of stuff. And also you shouldn't be taking it on an empty stomach for that reason as well. You should be making sure you eat with it. So also drinking alcohol will also, like if you're drinking a good bit of alcohol and then you take a good bit of ibuprofen every day, like that can make those risks higher as well. So it's just a good thing to know.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So there was a bit of a scandal in 2009 when the former chief of Bay State Medical Center in Springfield, Massachusetts, Scott S. Rubin, stated that while he had given data for 21 studies for the efficacy of the drug, this data had actually been falsified so that its efficacy was exaggerated. Now, he said the same thing about Celebrex, which is manufactured by Pfizer, who he had once been like a spokesperson for. I don't know if there was like beef there or what, but anyway, the studies that he had mentioned actually had not been used in applying for FDA approval. So, like, nothing came of that, I guess. And Merck was like, no comment, you know. so, but in a clinical trial to promote Vioxx's GI protective traits over another NSAID, naproxen, and this is one of those, like, they're testing while it's already on the market just to see if they can, like, add that to more of the marketing. Guess what? We just showed that this has more of this, so buy this drug instead of all the other ones, right? That kind of deal. Mm-hmm. But in doing this, it actually became known that there was a significantly higher risk of heart attack and stroke with Vioxx than with naproxen, especially in those already at risk, like those who already have other risk factors or whatnot. So, as of November 1st, 1999, 79 patients out of 4,000 taking Vioxx had had serious heart problems or have died, compared with 41 patients taking naproxen. In response to this, Merck was like, oh, that's just because naproxen has cardiovascular protective traits, not because our drug is unsafe. It's kind of a reach, okay. But now the safety panel said it couldn't tell if Vioxx was causing the heart problems or if, again, naproxen acting like a low-dose aspirin, which it's not, by the way, was protecting people from these heart problems. Either way, it was, they were, in doing so, making Vioxx just look risky by comparison, I guess. Either way, they're shooting themselves in the foot by continuing on with this particular study or thing. Now, in further study, it was decided within Merck to only include data from that pulled a month before the study ended. This later ended up leaving out at least 3 incidents of heart attack, basically, myocardial infarction, however you want to say it. But they did later tell the FDA about these other 3 incidents. They were pulling data from it early to, I guess, avoid using more numbers like that.
Uh-huh.
They then doubled down in May of 2001, saying the drug was safe. Several cardiologists published a meta-analysis of the Merck GI study, the one that was like, it's good for your GI system, but it may also have higher risks of heart attack, in comparison to naproxen, that study that I mentioned earlier. These cardiologists did a meta-analysis of that, and they concluded that it's not that naproxen is heart safe, and there haven't been any other indications that it wasn't used for that, but that Vioxx is heart unsafe, essentially. Now, in September of 2001, the FDA sent a warning letter to the CEO of Merck stating, and this is their words, "Your promotional campaign discounts the fact that in the Vigor study," which is the name of the study done, patients on Vioxx were observed to have 4 to 5-fold increase in myocardial infarctions, those are the heart attacks, compared to patients on the comparator nonsteroidal anti-inflammatory drug, naproxen. So this led to the introduction in April of 2002 of warnings on Vioxx labeling concerning the increased risk of cardiovascular events. So heart attack, stroke, both of those really, especially after taking it for around 18 months, it just increased the longer you were taking it. Anyway, 4 years after the study possibly showed heart risks, Merck pulled the drug from, they marked it, they pulled the drug from the market after another study on colon polyp prevention showed increased risk of heart attack, stroke. Yeah. So I guess they were trying to see if it helped to prevent colon polyps too, and again shot themselves in the foot by just showing more evidence of it hurting the cardiovascular system, which, you know what, we want these people to shoot themselves in the foot so that the truth comes out about any sort of, risks that they might try not to reveal. I don't know why you would, Yeah, so whatever. But research later published in the medical journal Lancet, which I know we talk about, we hear that name a lot, estimates that 88,000 Americans had heart attacks from taking Vioxx, and 38,000 of them died. That's a lot.
Wow.
Now, around 13,000 lawsuits have been filed against the company on behalf of 23,000 plaintiffs who allege the drug caused heart attacks and strokes. Now, Merck was really holding on to the point that there were risks only if the drug was taken longer than 18 months. They were like, but, because many of these plaintiffs took it for less time than that. But that's not a number that's not an absolute number, first of all. You take it for, I don't know, you take it for 18 months and one day, boom, heart attack, right? No, it just says the risk gets higher at that point. Doesn't mean there's no risk before that. So,
right.
Merck handled lawsuits separately at first. They won 3, then they lost 3 of these jury cases in different states concerning different cases by 2005. And then in 2007, Merck did announce they were agreeing to pay $4.85 billion, about $100,000 per person affected, to settle most claims. I think at that point they were like, you know what, we're not doing ourselves any favors. So
yeah, at that point their lawyers are wising up and saying it's actually going to cost us less if we just pay out $100,000 to every plaintiff.
Well, also, I think at first they were hoping if they had lost or if they had won some of these lawsuits, maybe some of the other people would drop them, thinking that they would also lose or whatever. I don't know. It was shady either way, but okay. Another anti-inflammatory drug, Bextra, was also pulled after high risks for cardiovascular events such as heart attack, stroke. Bextra, Valdecoxib, did I say that one right? Who knows? Valdecoxib is just not there anymore anyway, so who cares? Was
How's it
approved
spelled? Is it
by,
BEC?
no, it's
Is it BEC? How's it spelled?
Bextra.
Oh, gotcha. Extra with a B. Valdecoxib. Yes, I think you got it.
Valdecoxib. That one doesn't matter because it's not there anymore anyway.
Right.
But it was it was approved by the FDA in 2001. It was only on the market until 2005, and it also held other risks worth noting. It has been linked to a serious skin condition known as Stevens-Jones syndrome, or toxic epidermal necrolysis. There were about like 49 reported cases per million. Up to the end of March 2004, there were like 63 cases of Stevens-Jones syndrome or toxic epidermal necrolysis reported with Bextra use. So, Bextra problems. Now, this is a rare, if you don't know what Stevens-Jones is, it's pretty awful. It's a rare but
Uh-huh.
serious skin condition. It can be caused by other meds as well, though it's not with as high a risk as Bextra was apparently. I've seen or at least I've heard of cases in which people who had a serious reaction to a certain uh, antibiotic that they might have been sensitive to had this happen. It's very rare, but it has happened. Now it results in flu-like symptoms at first, of course, as so many things do, followed
Sorry.
by
It's our favorite symptom to mention. Oh, man.
followed by the painful blistering and peeling off of the skin and areas of the mouth, nose, and genitals. I won't go too deep into it, but this can rarely lead to death via
Yeah.
infection or shock or organ failure. The thing is, though, your skin just has to essentially regrow. So, like most people survive this, but it's basically just a chemical skinning, and it's pretty awful. But the skin
Yeah.
has to essentially regrow, and this can take weeks or months to recover from. Patients would usually need intensive care, so like the ICU or burn unit. There may be long-term complications of the skin, eyes, or lungs. But I said it's, most people survive from this with care, with good care, but it can be deadly as well. So yeah, that's not cool. Also, Pfizer was later fined $2.3 billion after being found guilty of healthcare fraud. They had apparently, or somebody within the company had apparently bribed and pushed Bextra alongside other drugs, like back in the day, for money and gifts. So that's naughty. Naughty.
And let us just say, like, just so everybody knows, like, I mean, yes, we are. We're pro science. We're pro data. We are also pro patient,
Well,
which
yeah.
means that
Yeah.
we are appropriately skeptical of big pharma.
Oh,
I
yeah.
just want to
Yeah.
make that clear. Like, these are massive, multi-billion-dollar operations.
Mm-hmm.
They are no different than any other multi-billion-dollar multinational operation. They
Mm-hmm.
are led by terrible people for the most part who don't want to pay a living wage and who want to maximize profit, and
Right.
their mission is to maximize shareholder value. It's not to take care of sick people. Okay. Pfizer's not interested in taking care of sick people. I hate to break it to everyone. So just so everybody knows where we're at, like we're not, we're not screaming from one side of the spectrum. We see all the terrible things that big pharma does, that health insurance companies do. We take all that in together. We try to be people who are intellectually consistent, not just soapboxers. So
Oh,
all
yeah. I
that,
mean, and all these pharmaceutical companies are like this. There's going to be a lot of greedy
yeah,
people involved. Now you're probably
yes,
going to you'll have people who are involved that are like chemists who are scientists that really do want to help, but they're not the ones leading those
sure.
groups typically.
No, they're not.
Um,
They're not. The CEOs
so
of America, the vast majority of, Fortune 500 CEOs, they've gotten there because they've got a mean streak. They
or a
have the
lying one.
ability to cause pain and harm to people and not feel that bad about it.
But
Yeah.
yeah, so
Welcome to end stage capitalism.
but honestly, like them being like there are rules and regulations that are
Yes.
supposed to catch things like this too. And so in this case, for instance, they were fined $2.3 billion. I'm sure. another one will be found in the future. They all try to get
Yeah.
around things, but here we are.
Hmm. Hmm.
Now, one more. This was a weight loss drug, and I remember hearing about it a lot in the 90s. This, then it was called Finfin. I don't know if you remember this, hearing about it or whatever. Um, it was a combination of two problematic drugs. Uh, so, yeah. Now, fenfluramine was introduced in the 1970s as a weight loss drug as it suppressed appetite. It wasn't all that popular, though, because it was kind of slow and temporary. Um, now, the thing is with like weight loss stuff, like we have long lived in a culture where it is like, in the 90s were honestly one of the worst times for this. It was like you had to be a certain size and you had to be it now, right? So
Hmm.
it's like,
Yeah.
in the 90s, it was just like this heroin chic sort of thing.
Yeah.
That's
The
what they
Kate
even called it.
Moss.
It was all the rage, right?
Yeah.
So, and obviously it's a problematic term for an era during which skinny wasn't skinny enough. So you've got like stars like
Uh-huh.
Jennifer Aniston, Kate Winslet, Nicole Richie were all considered uh, overweight or fat,
Listen,
which
I saw. I think I sent you the TikTok where Kate Winslet did an interview and she discussed. They played the audio from this awful TV show that was just dragging her on her figure,
hmm,
and she still is deeply affected enough by it that she cries when she talks about it. Now, of course, she has the last laugh because she's one of the best actresses to ever go on camera.
I mean, she's
But
gorgeous.
like, yeah, I there's no question. Like she's really attractive, but just like it's the pervasiveness, the damage that is done to people through this stuff is
Mhm.
quite staggering.
And it still happens through social media. And this time it's like
Hmm.
now, you see all these influencers, and these days it's just like photo and video editing and filters and maybe even
Mm.
AI. It may not even be a real person, but you're like, I need to look like that.
Yes.
And it's really sad. It always has been because it causes so many problems, so many mental health issues as well. But yeah, body shaming was just abundant. It still is. It was all so stupid, so harmful, and it's like I said, it's still happening just in different ways.
Hmm.
And I think I remember seeing in a magazine somewhere they were like, "Heroin chic is on its way back in," and I was like, "No, ew, no, we were done with that. Like, we didn't want that back then." Okay,
I I just
like,
I just can't believe that having the word heroin
mhm.
in the description was not a massive red flag from the jump.
And it wasn't just about being skinny that came from. There was this whole grunge, like dark circles. Like you literally would look like you were on drugs, and that was what was in at the time.
That's so
Because
terrible.
I don't know if you remember
Uh,
like the grunge looks of the 90s, like even the models, like and stuff, they were just like they looked like
yeah.
they were on a bender, right? Like they
Hmm.
just, and that was apparently attractive. And it's like, why do you, okay. So it promoted things that it just shouldn't have been promoted in many areas. So we don't want that back. Thanks.
Hmm.
Now, now also like the ones that would be shaming people too, like Kate Winslet, or like these men who had no business talking about anybody, right? Like,
Oh Lord.
I mean, just sir, I don't know. I'm just not gonna go into it. I'm not gonna be that person. So, but yeah, I remember walking into convenience stores for candy as a kid, seeing all these weight loss supplements just up there. You see the candy, and then up top you'd see all the weight loss supplements that the adults would look at. Or I say adults, but it's probably the teenagers too. They would be
Yeah.
in bright colors. There were like caffeine pills up there, and it was all like designed to hype you up and suppress your appetite. And I remember seeing them, like they'd have like the names, and it'd be like exclamation mark, like you know, if you buy me, take me, you're going to lose weight. You're going to feel great. It's going to be awesome. Probably going to have a heart attack too.
Yes.
Anyway, so
Also, your
yeah,
cardiac valves might get stuck open. I don't know.
yeah, and a lot of these are over the counter. They weren't regulated. There was no like,
Ugh.
you couldn't if you but a lot of people saw them on sale and like, well, they must be fine if they're allowed to sell them.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so now phentermine is another appetite suppressant that also releases norepinephrine. So you've got the one drug, fenfluramine, which is a kind of serotonin releaser, or yeah, that kind of thing. So, and then
Which, by the way,
phentermine.
you could either take Finfin, or, as we just learned, you can just eat Mexican food because it releases the highest amount of serotonin in your body.
I love some Mexican food. Oh my God, I love Mexican food.
There's got to be a connection there, sweetheart. I mean, an autistic ADHD
Love it.
person that absolutely loves Mexican food. How often do you get a shot of serotonin? Let's be honest.
Not much. I would say like the difference here though is this is supposed to like help you lose weight by making you not eat and just pushing and
Yeah.
pushing and pushing you to just do more and
I
burn out really.
Yeah. Yes. And I have to mention, like, I know the GLP-1 inhibitors are all the rage, but I'm just nervous that 5 years from now, the FDA is going to petition to have it removed from the market, because just any drugs that trick your brain into thinking that your body has eaten or is sated, it just makes me nervous. It really does.
I'm not even sure what, hang on. I haven't looked into a lot of the GLP stuff just because it kind of came on the scene really quickly. I know they've
Came on
been
the scene really
out.
fast.
Well, they've been on the scene for people like type 2 diabetes. They were already out there for that.
Yes. Yes.
But yeah, let's see. Basically, they stimulate the pancreas. They trigger the pancreas to release insulin in response to food, helps control blood sugar levels. They also suppress the release of glucagon, which is another hormone that can affect blood sugar levels. Slowing of
Yeah.
digestion. This can slow down how quickly food is digested, which can reduce appetite. So it makes you full longer,
Yeah.
apparently. And then they also reduce hunger in the brain as well. So using, I'm sure, neurotransmitter type stuff. But yeah, so these have been out, but not for, I mean, for weight loss, but usually alongside type 2 diabetes. The thing that I've always heard with these though is once you're on it, like Ozempic, I think is one of them. Um, the thing with these is like it may help you while you're on it, but I've also heard of some not so great side effects, GI issues, also like losing weight very quickly, so that it's like a lot of change with the skin and things like that. And when you go off of it, people tend to gain weight very quickly back on. Like it becomes, it doesn't last. So, yeah, I mean, I'm sure it's helped people who've had type 2 diabetes, and who have had weight issues to where it's obviously, clinically hurting them. But to do it just because you want to fit into, I don't know, Marilyn Monroe's dress at the Met Gala, whatever it is she wore that thing to. I think she pretty much starved herself for that. Was it that Kardashian chick, Kim Kardashian? But I'm pretty sure she's also used Ozempic. A lot of stars have. So, but there's a give and take with any medication. So you're just going to have
Yeah.
side
And
effects. You're going
also,
to have issues there. So
yeah. And anybody that's last name is Kardashian has an army of plastic surgeons making sure that they can
and
charge $2 million.
nutritionists
Yeah.
and nannies.
This army of people make sure that Kim Kardashian can charge $2 million per a single Instagram post. Okay. Just keep that in mind.
I mean, it's obviously not realistic to try to be on that level or whatever, but it's just, But in people's brains, it's like, if I could just get to that point, then I'll be happy, right? But you won't
No.
be. You actually won't be. You'll think of something else that'll keep you from being happy. I know, because I was that person for the longest time. It's like, if I could just have this, I'll be happy. If I could just look like this, I'll be happy. And then you get older and you're like, I just want sleep, and I just want just some rest and time, and just medication because my brain hurts. Right? Like, you just
I just I I just want cookies and a nap. That's all I want.
I just want Mexican food.
That's right.
Right? It's like, just,
Yes.
I don't know. I'm just being real, like, all things considered. Now, obviously, if it's for health, if it's for clinical reasons, I get that. I get the
Yes.
use of it. I get the use of it for its
Yes.
intended use, with alongside, like,
Of
type 2
course.
diabetes, obesity, that is
Yes.
that you have tried to fix other ways, say, and, like, it's just, you're really having issues clinically. It's really affecting your health. Obviously, go for it, because, like, and I
Yeah.
think a doctor can help you decide, like, if that's good for you or not. It's I need
Yes.
to take this so I can lose weight, so I can get this bikini body for the summer, right? Like,
No. No.
it's just, it's dangerous to me to use medications in such a way. So, and it's expensive. I mean, I'm pretty sure
Mhm.
it's pretty expensive. I don't think insurance pays for, unless it's a clinical reason. I don't know that they pay for you to take this medication simply for weight loss, especially if you
Yeah.
don't really have a whole lot of weight to lose. Like, there are people taking it who really aren't obese.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
And you're starting to see a lot of you're starting to see the trend of Ozempic face. Like, certain
yeah.
celebrities will jump on it, and then they, like, people in the comments and social media would be like, "Yeah, that's Ozempic face."
Well, they're taking it long term, and
Unfortunately.
these are also people who probably shouldn't be taking it. You know,
Mm-hmm.
um,
Yep.
there, and then there's the problem of it not being available for those who actually need it, who do have, like, type 2
Yeah.
diabetes, or do have, like, clinical obesity that is affecting their health. And it's, I don't know,
Mm-hmm.
but I mean, I understand what you mean. Like, what's going to happen several years from now in those who didn't need it, who've been on it for,
Mm-hmm.
so long. Anyway, we're not even talking about that medication, but it is a current weight loss medication. I will say that it is probably acutely less dangerous than Finfin, because we're going to talk about a little more with Finfin. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
Finfin was supposed to be a quick acting weight loss, make money scheme, basically, by putting these two medications together. Okay. So, yeah. In 1984, researchers at the University of Rochester Medical Center reportedly did this study showing that, like, fenfluramine and phentermine together showed better weight loss results than the two on their own. So you put them together. By the 90s, it's called Finfin, right?
Uh-huh.
Also, side story, there was a shady study done in the mid 90s with the intentions of finding a connection between serotonin and aggression, and how you can predict aggressive behavior. Fenfluramine is derived from amphetamines. Okay. It is considered serotonergic, which means it affects the nerve endings stimulated by serotonin. So it increases serotonin. Anyway, the study involved about 100 boys, primarily from minority backgrounds, who were administered doses of fenfluramine to explore the relationship between brain chemistry and aggression. So the researchers aimed to understand how serotonin levels might influence aggressive behaviors, particularly in children. Wow, children facing adverse home conditions. So,
Okay.
but it seems problematic, and it was heavily criticized. They basically took these boys from minority backgrounds and were like, "Well, you guys are more likely to have aggression problems, right? And go to jail for things." And it just seemed really like just a bad decision overall. I get they were trying to see if there was a connection, but it just seemed very biased in how they were doing this study.
Mm-hmm.
And, like,
Yeah.
it's not like the parents did agree to the study. There was some payment involved, but it was just a weird study. So
Yeah, they're assuming that adverse home conditions are only present in lower income households.
yeah, that and like it's the only thing that predicts aggressive behavior. And it's like not
Come on, man.
always, like that's not always true. Anyway, fenfluramine and phentermine were put together, marketed as an ultra weight loss drug, and there was some concern by the marketers, even then, that the combo drug would be causing pulmonary hypertension, which can be fatal. So
Bad.
they tried changing it up a little in 1995 to reduce effects, but the medical officer at the FDA, they really didn't change it that much. I mean, they put like another little small name in front of it, but it didn't change it that much. The FDA wanted to actually include a black box warning on the labeling for pulmonary hypertension. And European regulators did add this warning. Hang on a minute.
Hey, baby.
We still have candy canes in our house, and she loves some candy canes. So.
Hello. Oh,
Man.
she can't hear me.
No,
Hi,
she can't.
baby.
Here, say hi.
Hi.
Hey.
Oh, why are these so hard to open? Da-da-da-da.
Thank you, Mommy.
You're welcome. She's the best. Okay.
She is.
So, but yeah, European regulators did add this warning, but I guess the American side didn't want the labeling because I guess it meant like, well, we might lose sales or something. And when this drug without the label wasn't approved by that medical officer, they went like over this guy's head and got FDA management to sign off on it anyway without the warning in 1996. Not cool, you guys. Not cool.
Cool.
So
Love
in
it.
in 1996, a 30-year-old woman developed heart problems after a month of using fenfluramine, phentermine, Finfin, if you will. She died in February of 1997. The Boston Herald basically devoted a front page article to her. Then in August of 1997, authors of a paper in the New England Journal of Medicine discussed clinical findings in 24 people who had taken Finfin. Now, their findings suggested a possible correlation between mitral valve dysfunction in the heart and the use of these weight loss agents. So, like, there's all this stuff coming out now, and I'll see if they had put the black box on there, but they didn't. Now, the FDA alerted medical professionals that it had received 9 additional reports of the same type and requested they report any such cases to the agency's MedWatch. MedWatch is this program that was introduced in 1993. It's similar to that yellow card scheme I think I mentioned with over in Europe, in the UK, where doctors can basically go on this site and report other side effects that they're seeing, right? Like as a means of like just extra monitoring or gathering data from across multiple physicians from multiple states. It's helpful for that reason. It gets the or to their respective pharmaceutical manufacturers. So like just reporting when they see these kinds of things, so they have more data. Now, the FDA subsequently received over 100 additional reports of valvular heart disease in people taking Finfin, fenfluramine alone, or dexfenfluramine alone. Dexfenfluramine is when they try to switch it up a little bit, try to make it less problematic, but it didn't really do anything. They just added
Yeah, I bet it's
in front of it.
Yeah. It sounds like I don't know if that's when they're using an isomer
Yeah,
of the
yeah.
original molecule. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm so glad I remembered that. That's so fun.
I didn't want to go
love
too deep
organic
into it
chemistry.
because I knew if I went
Yeah.
too deep into it, we were going to go off in a whole different direction. But they tried
I'd
to
be
tweak it.
Googling. Yeah.
So
Yes.
did it work? No. So not going to discuss it because it didn't work anyway. Now, the FDA once again requested that the manufacturers of the drug provide a warning on their label. Like they are giving them, honestly, too much time and benefit of the doubt and like leniency, in my opinion. So yeah, the FDA can just continue to receive reports in 1997 of valvular aortic or mitral heart disease in people who had taken these drugs. The FDA finally requested its withdrawal from the market in September of 1997. This was after a study some doctors performed on patients taking this combo drug. They were using echocardiograms to see what was going on while they were taking it. And the findings indicated that approximately 30% of people who had taken the combination for up to 24 months had abnormal echocardiograms, even though they had no symptoms. So whether or not they were having symptoms, they were still having abnormal echocardiograms.
Red flag, baby.
Anyway, it was taken off the market in 1997. There were a lot of lawsuits, obviously. In 1999, the makers, American Home Products, or I think it was later called Wyeth something or other, it's just the manufacturer, agreed to a settlement of $3.75 billion. Then in August of 2000...
It's always in the billions.
Oh, it gets...
It's always billions with a B. Like, these people are making so much money.
Yeah, but then in August of 2000, the court approved a settlement with American Home Products for $4.75 billion to cover both medical monitoring and compensation for patients who suffered damages. So, like, they basically, the courts were like, you need to pay more than that, considering the amount of people it was affecting. The class, this whole group of plaintiffs would grow to nearly 600,000, and the Finfin settlement is now valued at $7.65 billion. One of the highest, yeah. It's also since been suggested that serious complications may occur nearly a decade after use. So we may not have seen the end of this.
Absolute disaster.
And I'm not trying to say, I know we were talking about the like Ozempic and other ones like it earlier. This is a different class of drug, obviously, than that.
Yeah, it's a different drug altogether.
Yeah, we're not saying like, oh, if you take this, it's going to cause the same thing. I'm not saying that at all.
No,
This is a completely different class of drugs. These drugs came straight from like amphetamines, and there wasn't enough study done on the two of them together anyway.
Right.
So it's unfortunate, but it caused a lot of problems. Yeah, but those are the drugs I chose for this episode. There are other ones we can do in the future because, there's still some drugs out there that have been removed or at least highly restricted that ended up being more of a problem than a cure. So, science becomes better, and we're able to see. Obviously, we see effects down the road now, and I think we're able to predict ahead of time a lot better than we used to be how a medication may affect groups of people and things like that. So that's a good thing. But there's definitely been some other, like ranitidine. I don't know if you remember that one. That one got pulled from shelves because I think possible carcinogenic stuff. I think I mentioned that earlier. But what they did was one of the makers of ranitidine, like, they came back with another drug, but it's actually, they called it the same thing, Zantac maybe. Zantac came back, but it's not ranitidine anymore. It's actually a different medication. So if you see like, oh, well, they brought that back. No, but it was ranitidine, but now they kept the brand name and they just changed the drug being used under that brand name. So yeah.
Yeah.
Basically what Prilosec is.
All right.
Famotidine.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it for this episode. Thank you all so much for watching and listening, and we will see you in the next one. Bye-bye for now.
Bye-bye.